The ship called Pale Light moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was a survey vessel, old and tired, sent to check dead planets for useful minerals. The crew had done this work 100 times before. They expected nothing interesting from the Sol system. Earth was a dead world. Everyone knew that. Una sat at her scanning station, watching numbers scroll across her screen. She was young for this work, only 23 cycles old, but she had sharp eyes and quick hands. The Vethray Dominion valued workers like her. They did not ask questions. They did their jobs and stayed quiet. But today, Una saw something that made her forget about staying quiet. "Dohan," she called across the bridge. "You need to see this." The chief scientist walked over slowly. Dohan was old, even for a Vethray. His gray skin hung loose on his thin frame, and his 4 eyes were clouded with age. He had seen many strange things in his long life. He did not expect the young technician to show him anything new. "What is it?" he asked, his voice dry and uninterested. "There's something under the ice." "On Earth." Una pointed at her screen. "A structure? It's huge. And it's artificial." Doan leaned closer. His 4 eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he straightened up and turned away. "Impossible," he said. "Earth has been dead for 600 years. The solar flares killed everything. There's nothing down there but ice and ash." "The scans don't lie," Una said. She knew she should not argue with the chief scientist, but she could not help herself. "Look at the readings: metal, concrete, power signatures. Something is still running down there." Jisoo, Una's closest friend on the ship, came over to look. She was a nervous woman who jumped at loud noises, but she was also the best data analyst on the crew. Her eyes moved quickly over the numbers. "She's right," Jisoo said quietly. "There's definitely something there. Deep underground. Very deep." Doan stood very still. Una watched him struggle with himself. He wanted to ignore this. He wanted to fly away and pretend he had never seen these readings. But he was a scientist, and scientists could not ignore evidence. "Contact the Dominion Council," he said finally. "Tell them what we found. Let them decide what to do." The Council's decision came quickly. Too quickly, Una thought. They ordered the Pale Light to stay in orbit and wait for an excavation team. They wanted to know what was hidden beneath Earth's frozen surface. 3 weeks later, Una stood in the underground structure, and she understood why Doan had been afraid. The place was enormous. Tunnels stretched in every direction, carved deep into the rock. The walls were smooth and white, lined with pipes and wires that still hummed with power after 6 centuries. Emergency lights glowed red in the darkness. The air was cold and stale, but breathable. And everywhere, there were pods. Thousands of them. Long, glass-covered boxes arranged in neat rows, each one connected to the walls by thick cables. Una walked among them slowly, her breath making clouds in the cold air. She looked through the glass at the faces inside. Humans. Dead humans. Their bodies were frozen, their eyes closed, their skin gray and lifeless. The pods had failed long ago. The machines had tried to keep them alive, but 600 years was too long. The sleepers had died one by one, alone in the dark, waiting for a rescue that never came. Una felt tears on her cheeks. She had never seen a human before, except in pictures. They looked so small, so fragile. It was hard to believe that this weak species had once ruled an entire planet. "This way," called Mireille, the medical officer assigned to the expedition. She was a cold woman who rarely smiled, but even she seemed moved by what they had found. "There's something different over here." Una followed her through the tunnels until they reached a chamber at the very center of the structure. Here, there was only one pod. It sat on a raised platform, surrounded by machines that blinked and beeped softly. Unlike the others, this pod was clean. Its glass was clear. Its lights were green. And the human inside was breathing. "That's impossible," Do-hwan whispered. He had come down to see for himself, though he had not wanted to. The power requirements alone, keeping someone alive for 600 years. Yuna stepped closer to the pod. She looked down at the human inside. It was a male, young-looking, with black hair and a calm face. He looked like he was only sleeping, like he might wake up at any moment. On the side of the pod, a name was written in Old Earth script. Taiwan. "We need to wake him up," Yuna said. "We need to study him first," Myre argued. "We don't know what condition he's in. We don't know if his mind is intact. He could be dangerous. He's the last of his kind," Yuna said. "He deserves to know what happened. He deserves to know he's not alone." Do-hwan looked at the pod for a long time. Then he sighed and nodded. "Begin the revival process," he ordered. "But be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The machines around the pod began to work. Warm air flowed into the chamber. The ice on the glass started to melt. Numbers scrolled across the medical displays, showing heartbeat, brain activity, oxygen levels. And then the lights flickered. Yuna looked up. The emergency lights in the ceiling were blinking. The machines on the walls were sparking. Something was pulling power from the ship's systems, draining energy faster than the generators could produce it. "What's happening?" Jisoo asked, her voice high with fear. "It's the pod," Myre said, staring at her instruments. "It's drawing power. Massive amounts of power. But that doesn't make sense. Life support doesn't need this much energy." Do-hwan backed away from the platform. His old face was pale with fear. "Stop the process," he ordered. "Stop it now." But it was too late. The pod's lid hissed open. Steam rose into the cold air. And slowly, very slowly, Taiwan opened his eyes. They were not the eyes Yuna had expected. Not confused or frightened or lost. They were clear and bright, and they seemed to look right through her, into some place she could not see. The last human took his first breath in 600 years. And somewhere deep below them, the dead planet stirred in its sleep. Taiwan did not understand where he was. The last thing he remembered was lying down in the cold pod, watching the glass close above his face. The scientists had promised him that he would wake up soon. They had promised him that help was coming. They had lied. He sat up slowly, his muscles stiff and weak. The air tasted wrong. The light looked wrong. Everything was wrong. "Please remain calm," said a voice. Taiwan turned and saw a strange creature standing nearby. It had gray skin and 4 eyes and a body that was too thin, too tall. It wore a white uniform covered in symbols he did not recognize. Taiwan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He coughed and tried again. "Where am I?" He managed to say. "What year is it?" The creature exchanged looks with its companions. There were several of them, Taiwan realized, all watching him like he was something dangerous, something to be feared. "You are aboard the Pale Light," the creature said. "A survey vessel of the Vethri Dominion. The current year, by your calendar, is 2847. You have been asleep for 623 years. Taiwan heard the words, but they did not make sense. 600 years. That was not possible. That was not what they had promised. "The others," he said. "The other sleepers. Where are they?" Silence. The creatures looked at each other again. Finally, a younger one stepped forward. This one was different from the others, with softer features and kinder eyes. Taiwan would later learn that her name was Yuna. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "You are the only survivor. The others, their pods failed." Long ago, Taiwan felt something break inside his chest. He thought of his mother, who had refused to enter the cryosleep program. He thought of his friends, his co-workers, everyone he had known. All gone, all dead. He was alone. He screamed. The sound that came from his throat was not a human sound. It was deeper, louder, filled with a pain that seemed to shake the very walls. The lights in the chamber exploded. Glass shattered. The machine sparked and died. The alien creatures fell back, covering their ears, their 4 eyes wide with terror. And then it was over. Taiwan sat in the darkness, breathing hard, tears running down his face. He did not understand what had just happened. He did not understand how he had done that. The creatures took him to their ship. They put him in a small white room with a bed and a window that showed the stars. They brought him food and water. They asked him questions. So many questions. Ray was the medical officer in charge of studying him. She was cold and careful, never smiling, always watching. She took samples of his blood. She scanned his body with machines. She wrote notes on a small tablet, her 4 eyes never leaving him. "Your cellular structure is changing," she told him one day. "It's different from the ancient human samples in our archives. Your body is adapting, evolving. We don't understand how." Taiwan did not understand either, but he could feel it. Something was happening inside him. Something was waking up. He healed faster now. A cut on his hand closed in minutes instead of days. His eyesight became sharper. He could hear conversations through walls. He could feel the ship's engines humming in his bones, like a heartbeat that was not his own. And there were other things. Stranger things. One night, Taiwan could not sleep. He lay in his bed, thinking about Earth, about everyone he had lost. His grief was a heavy stone in his chest, pressing down on him until he could not breathe. He closed his eyes and wished he could feel the sun again. He wished he could smell the grass, hear the birds, touch the rain. When he opened his eyes, the observation deck was full of flowers. They grew from the floor, the walls, even the ceiling. Vines covered the windows. Leaves spread across every surface. The air was thick with the smell of green, growing things. Eunice stood in the doorway, her mouth open, her eyes wide. "How did you do that?" she whispered. "I don't know," Taiwan said. And he truly did not. Dohan came to see the observation deck. He walked through the flowers slowly, touching them with his thin gray fingers. His face was troubled. "This is not possible," he said. "There were no seeds on this ship. No soil, no water. These plants cannot exist." "But they do," Eunice said. "Yes," Dohan agreed. "They do." He went away and did not come back for several days. When he returned, he looked even older than before. He looked frightened. "I searched the ancient Earth archives," he told Taiwan. "The records from before the solar flares. I found something. A theory. A hypothesis that was never proven." "What theory?" Taiwan asked. Dohan sat down heavily. His 4 eyes looked at Taiwan with something like pity. "The scientists of old Earth believed that humanity was special," he said. "Not because of your technology or your culture, but because of your connection to your planet. They believed that humans were not just a species. They were part of Earth itself, a piece of the planet's consciousness, a living extension of its will." Taiwan shook his head. "That doesn't make sense." "No," Dohan agreed. "It doesn't. But look at what you can do. You make plants grow from nothing. You break machines with your voice. Your body changes and adapts in ways that should be impossible." He paused. "The theory suggests that when Earth died, it did not disappear completely. It encoded itself into human DNA. It hid inside your species, waiting for a survivor to carry it forward." Taiwan felt cold. "You're saying I'm not just human anymore. I'm saying you might never have been just human, Dohwan replied. I'm saying that what woke up in that pod wasn't just a man. It was a planet, a world, a power of nature itself. Taiwan looked down at his hands. They looked normal, ordinary, human, but he could feel the truth of Dohwan's words. He could feel the power inside him, growing stronger every day. He could feel the ghost of Earth moving in his blood, whispering secrets he was only beginning to understand. He was the last human, but he was also something more. And he had no idea what that meant for the galaxy that had let his world die. Word spread quickly through the Dominion. A human had been found alive, the last of a dead species, sleeping under the ice of a dead world. But the rumors said more than that. The rumors said he had powers, strange powers, dangerous powers. Admiral Haniel received the reports on his flagship, the Iron Law. He was a tall Vethre with sharp eyes and a harder heart. He had served the Dominion for 50 years. He had seen rebellions crushed and planets burned. He did not frighten easily, but these reports frightened him. He made plants grow from nothing, his aide told him. He destroyed machines with his voice. The medical officer says his body is changing every day, becoming something new, something we don't understand. Haniel looked out the window at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, a frozen ball of ice and memory. He had been taught as a child that humans were weak, that they had destroyed themselves through stupidity and violence, that the galaxy was better without them. Now he was not so sure. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We go to the Pale Light. We take the human into custody. If he resists, he paused. We do what must be done. On the Pale Light, Taiwan felt the danger coming before anyone told him. He woke in the middle of the night with his heart racing. The air felt heavy. The ship's systems hummed with a strange new rhythm. Something was wrong. Yuna came to his room an hour later. Her face was pale. A battle fleet is coming, she said. Admiral Haniel. He wants to take you away. He says you're dangerous. Am I dangerous? Taiwan asked. Yuna was quiet for a moment. I don't know, she admitted. But I know you haven't hurt anyone. You didn't ask for this. You just woke up. She sat down beside him. I won't let them take you. Not without a fight. Myre came too, though she pretended it was only to monitor his condition. But Taiwan saw the worry in her 4 eyes. She had spent weeks studying him, learning his secrets. Somewhere along the way, she had started to care. Your powers are growing faster, she told him. Every day, your connection to whatever this is becomes stronger. I don't think they can contain you, but they might try to kill you instead. Then maybe I should leave, Taiwan said. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me. Where would you go? Myre asked. Taiwan thought about it. There was only one answer. Home, he said. Earth. Before they could plan their escape, a message came through on a private channel. It was from a woman named Sujin, a scientist who had left the Dominion years ago to pursue forbidden research. Her face appeared on Yuna's screen, old and tired but burning with excitement. I know what you are, she told Taiwan. I've spent my whole life studying the records from old Earth, the theories about human evolution, the connection between your species and your planet. She leaned closer to the screen. Earth didn't just die. It fought back. It encoded its entire biosphere into human DNA. Every plant, every animal, every drop of water and breath of air. It's all inside you. Waiting. Waiting for what? Taiwan asked. For a chance to live again, Sujin said. You're not just a survivor. You're a seed. A vessel carrying an entire world's worth of life. And if you can reach Earth, if you can connect with what remains of the planet's consciousness, you might be able to bring it back. The fleet arrived 3 days later. 100 warships surrounded the pale light, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Admiral Haniel's voice boomed through every speaker on the ship. "Surrender the human. You have 1 hour to comply." Taiwan stood on the bridge, watching the ships through the main window. He felt strangely calm. The fear he had expected was not there. Instead, he felt something else. A warmth in his chest, a strength in his bones, a voice in his head that was not quite his own. The soldiers came aboard. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that crackled with electricity. They marched through the corridors, pushing aside the crew, searching for their target. They found him in the observation deck, standing among the flowers he had grown. "Come with us," the squad leader ordered. "Do not resist." Taiwan looked at them. He felt sorry for them. They were just following orders. They did not understand what they were dealing with. "I don't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "Please leave." The squad leader raised his weapon. Final warning. Taiwan closed his eyes. He reached inside himself, to the place where the warmth lived, where Earth's ghost whispered its secrets. And he let go. The soldiers' weapons began to rust. The metal turned orange and crumbled in their hands. Their armor grew heavy, so heavy they fell to their knees. The air around them thickened, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. They gasped for breath. They screamed for help, but no help came. And after a few minutes, they lay still on the floor, unconscious but alive. The flowers around them had grown taller, their petals bright and colorful, as if celebrating a victory. Yuna ran into the room, stopping short when she saw the fallen soldiers. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I didn't hurt them," Taiwan said. "I just made the environment reject them, made it harder for them to stay." He looked at his hands, still amazed by his own power. "I'm starting to understand now. I don't control nature. I am nature, and nature protects itself." Admiral Haniel withdrew his fleet that day, but his message was clear. He would return with more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. He would burn Earth itself if he had to. He would not let this threat survive. Taiwan watched the fleet disappear into the darkness of space. He knew what he had to do. "Take me to Earth," he told Yuna. "I need to go home. I need to find out who I really am. And maybe, just maybe, he could bring his world back to life." The small shuttle cut through the darkness toward Earth. Inside, 4 passengers sat in silence. Taiwan stared out the window at the approaching planet. Yuna flew the ship with steady hands. Mireille checked her medical equipment for the 100th time. And Sujin, who had joined them at a secret meeting point, typed notes into her tablet, recording everything. Earth looked dead. Gray clouds covered the surface. Ice spread across the continents like a frozen shroud. There were no lights, no signs of life, nothing but endless cold and darkness. This was the planet Taiwan had been born on. This was the home he had lost. "Are you ready?" Yuna asked softly. Taiwan did not answer. He was not sure he would ever be ready for this. They landed near the ruins of what had once been a great city. So, the records called it. Taiwan had lived here once. He had walked these streets. He had worked in the tall buildings. He had laughed with friends in the small restaurants and cafes. Now, there was nothing. Only ice and silence and the ghosts of 8 billion dead. Taiwan stepped out of the shuttle. The cold hit him like a wall, but he barely felt it. His body had changed so much that temperature no longer mattered. He could stand in fire or ice and feel only a mild discomfort. He was no longer fully human. He was something else. He walked forward, his feet crunching on the frozen ground. Behind him, he heard Yuna and the others following, their breath making clouds in the cold air. But he did not look back. He was focused on something else. Something he could feel pulling at him from deep beneath the surface. With each step, something strange happened. The ice beneath his feet began to melt. Water pooled around his shoes, sinking into the frozen soil. And where the water touched the ground, things began to grow. It started small. A blade of grass here. A tiny flower there. But as Taiwan walked deeper into the ruins, the growth spread faster. Moss covered the broken walls. Vines climbed the fallen buildings. Trees pushed up through the ice, their branches spreading toward the gray sky. Impossible, Sujin whispered, watching with wide eyes. The soil has been dead for centuries. There are no seeds, no nutrients, nothing that could support life. He's bringing it with him, Myray said quietly. The life is inside him. He's just letting it out. Taiwan did not hear them. He was lost in a trance, moving forward without thinking, following the pull that grew stronger with every step. He walked through the ruins of the city he had loved, and life followed in his wake. Finally, he reached the center. Here, there had once been a great plaza, a place where people gathered to celebrate and protest and simply live. Now it was a crater, blasted clean by the solar flares that had killed his world. But Taiwan felt something here. Something waiting. He knelt on the frozen ground. He placed his hands flat on the ice. And he closed his eyes. The connection hit him like lightning. Suddenly, he was not in his body anymore. He was everywhere. He was the ice and the rock and the dead soil beneath. He was the water that still flowed in underground rivers. He was the bacteria that slept in the darkness, waiting for warmth. He was every dormant seed, every frozen root, every trace of life that had somehow survived the destruction. And he was not alone. Something else was there, in the darkness. Something vast and old and patient. It had been sleeping for 600 years, waiting for someone to wake it up. Waiting for a vessel. Waiting for him. Taiwan felt it wrap around him like a mother's embrace. He felt its sorrow for all that had been lost. He felt its hope for what might be saved. And he felt its rage at those who had done this. Those who had murdered an entire world. He saw the truth then, in visions that flashed through his mind like fire. The solar flares had not been natural. They had been triggered, caused, created by the ancestors of the Vethri Dominion, who had feared what humanity might become. The galaxy's rulers had killed 8 billion people to stop a threat that had not yet been born. But they had failed. Because Earth had seen the attack coming. Earth had known it could not survive. And so it had hidden itself in the only place it could. Inside its children. Inside humanity. Inside Taiwan. I understand now, Taiwan whispered. Tears ran down his face and froze on his cheeks. I understand what I am. He was not just a man. He was a planet. A world. A power of nature that had been sleeping for 6 centuries. Gathering strength. Waiting for this moment. He opened his eyes. The gray sky above him was changing. The clouds were thinning, letting through the first rays of sunlight in 600 years. The ice around him was melting fast now, flowing down the slopes in rivers of cold water. And everywhere, life was returning. Grass spread across the plaza like a green wave. Flowers bloomed in colors Taiwan had forgotten existed. Trees grew in minutes, their branches reaching toward the sun. Birds appeared from nowhere, singing songs that had not been heard since before the destruction. The air filled with the smell of earth and rain and growing things. Yuna fell to her knees, crying. Myray stared with her 4 eyes wide, unable to believe what she was seeing. Sujin laughed and laughed, her theory proven beyond any doubt. Taiwan stood up slowly. He looked around at the miracle he had created. He felt the planet waking up beneath his feet, stretching, yawning, coming back to life after its long sleep. And then he looked up at the sky, where 100 points of light had appeared. Ships, Warships, Admiral Haniel's fleet. Come to finish what his ancestors had started. Taiwan smiled. He was not afraid anymore. He had found out who he was. He had brought his world back to life. And now he would protect it no matter what it took. Admiral Haniel stood on the bridge of the Iron Law, looking down at the planet below. What he saw made no sense. Earth was supposed to be dead. Earth was supposed to be a frozen ball of ice and ash, empty of life, empty of hope. But the readings on his instruments told a different story. Life signs. Millions of them. Spreading across the surface like fire. Plants growing at impossible speeds. Animals appearing from nowhere. An entire biosphere coming back to life in a matter of hours. And at the center of it all, one human heartbeat. Strong, steady, unafraid. Open a channel, Haniel ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. Broadcast to the surface. His face appeared on screens across the fleet, and somewhere far below, Taiwan looked up and listened. Human, Haniel said. I am Admiral Haniel of the Vethray Dominion. You are a threat to galactic peace. Your powers are dangerous. Your existence cannot be allowed to continue. He paused, trying to sound confident. Surrender yourself now, or we will bombard this planet until nothing remains. You have 1 hour. On the surface, Taiwan stood in the center of the reborn plaza. Around him, life exploded in every direction. Trees that had not existed an hour ago now reached 50 meters into the sky. Rivers flowed where there had been only ice. Animals ran through the new forests, and birds filled the air with song. Yuna, Mireille, and Sujin watched him with worried eyes. What will you do? Yuna asked. Taiwan thought about the question. He thought about his family, who had died in the flares. He thought about his friends, who had frozen in their sleep chambers. He thought about 8 billion people, murdered by those who feared what they might become. He should hate them. He should want revenge. He should want to destroy every ship in that fleet and make them pay for what their ancestors had done. But that was not who he was. That was not what Earth wanted. Life did not exist to destroy. Life existed to grow, to spread, to continue, no matter what tried to stop it. I'm going to talk to them, he said. Before anyone could stop him, Taiwan rose into the air. He did not know how he did it. He simply wanted to go up, and the wind obeyed. It lifted him gently, carrying him higher and higher, through the clouds that were now white instead of gray, toward the stars that had watched his world die and come back to life. He passed through the atmosphere, and he did not need to breathe. His body had changed enough that the vacuum of space felt like nothing more than cold water. He floated between the planet and the fleet, small and alone against 100 warships. Admiral Haniel stared at him through the bridge window. A single human, hanging in space like he belonged there, like he was part of the universe itself. Fire, Haniel ordered, his voice cracking with fear. Fire everything. The fleet opened up. Missiles streaked toward Taiwan from every direction. Laser beams cut through the darkness. Bombs fell toward Earth, aimed at the new life that covered its surface. Taiwan raised his hand. The missiles stopped. Not destroyed. Not deflected. Just stopped, hanging in space like frozen drops of rain. And then, slowly, they began to fall apart. Their metal shells rusted and crumbled. Their fuel evaporated. Their warheads broke down into harmless dust. In seconds, weapons that could have destroyed cities became nothing but clouds of particles drifting away into the void. Taiwan looked at the fleet. When he spoke, every being on every ship heard his voice, not through their speakers, but in their minds. You burned my world. You killed my people. 8 billion lives ended because you were afraid of what we might become. His voice was not angry. It was sad. And still, life endured. Still, I am here. I am not your enemy. But I will not let you do this again. He flew toward the iron law. The ship's guns fired at him, but the beams bent around his body like light around a star. He passed through the hull as if it were made of water, leaving no damage behind. Soldiers tried to stop him as he walked through the corridors. But their weapons would not work. The ones that fired bullets found the bullets turning to seeds that sprouted in their hands. The ones that fired energy found their power cells drained and dead. And when they tried to block his path with their bodies, they found themselves suddenly tired, so tired they could not stand. Taiwan did not hurt them. He simply walked past them, leaving sleeping soldiers and blooming flowers in his wake. He found Admiral Haniel on the bridge, backed into a corner, a small weapon shaking in his hands. "Stay back," Haniel ordered. "I know what you are. You're a monster. A freak. You shouldn't exist." Taiwan stopped. He looked at the Admiral with eyes that held 6 centuries of grief and 600 years of patience. "I am not a monster," he said. "I am what your ancestors tried to prevent. I am nature's answer to extinction. I am life, refusing to die." He held out his hand. "I could do to your worlds what you did to mine. I could seed your planets with Earth life. I could let nature reclaim everything you've built. I could turn your cities into forests and your ships into coral reefs." Haniel's face went white with terror. "But I won't," Taiwan continued, "because that's not what life does. Life doesn't destroy. Life grows. Life spreads. Life forgives." He lowered his hand. "I'm offering you peace. Take your fleet and go. Leave Earth alone. Let us rebuild. And maybe, someday, we can learn to share this galaxy together." Haniel dropped his weapon. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken. "Why would you show mercy to us?" Taiwan smiled. It was a sad smile, but also hopeful. "Because that's what my mother would have wanted," he said. "Because that's what 8 billion people would have wanted. Because hate is a poison, and I've had enough poison in my life." The fleet withdrew. Word spread across the galaxy. The human had won, not through violence, but through something far more powerful. Through mercy. Through hope. Through the simple, unstoppable force of life itself. Years passed. Earth bloomed. The planet that had been dead became the most beautiful world in the known galaxy. And humans began to return. Survivors were found on distant colony ships, descendants of those who had fled before the flares. They came home, one by one, to the world their ancestors had lost. Yuna and Mireille stayed with Taiwan. They helped him rebuild, helped him teach the new generation what it meant to be human, what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. One day, a young girl ran up to Taiwan in the plaza where he had first connected with Earth. She had black hair and bright eyes and a smile that reminded him of everyone he had lost. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you really bring the world back to life?" Taiwan knelt down so he was at her level. He looked at the trees and the flowers and the birds that filled the air with song. He felt the planet beneath his feet, alive and grateful, and finally at peace. "I didn't bring it back," he said. "It was never gone. It was just waiting. Like all of us. Waiting for a reason to wake up." The girl smiled and ran off to play. And Taiwan watched her go. The last human who had become something more, guardian of a world that had refused to die. Above him, the sun shone bright on a planet reborn. And somewhere in the darkness of space, life spread its wings and reached for the stars.